welcome back to Urban X TV. We have the Black Dot in the building.
Peace, family.
In lieu of the podcast tonight, we will be giving you, this special treat. We have the Black Dot. We're gonna talk about the public enemy situation.
Yes.
When it initially broke, we wanted to talk about it right away, but we wanted some details to come out about it, some more details to come out, and we wanted to hear everybody's explanation. So, let's get it.
Yes. The news had broke right before we went on the air last week, but again, it would have been inappropriate to, just jump out and, and speculate. This situation is dear to my heart because of who Public Enemy is. And for hip hoppers from my generation, a lot of them will say Public Enemy was the most important group of our time. It's all depending on how long you've been on the timeline. My favorite group of all time is probably the Cold Crush Brothers, Treacherous 3, groups of that nature. But when it came time to putting record on wax and using hip hop as a platform to waken, ignite, there were a bunch of groups that came out in that era. X-Clan, Brand Nubians, Paul Righteous Teacher, Lakim Shabazz, Rakim, Big Daddy Kane, KRS-One, and Public Enemy, just to name a few. And taking advantage of that platform, Public Enemy brought us something that sonically, metaphysically, aesthetically, we had never really seen. The Bomb Squad had delivered such a riveting sound, you know what I mean, which accompanied Chuck's voice, which accompanied the aesthetics of Professor Griff and the S1Ws, security of the first world, standing on stage with machine guns in this militant form, and it brought us Flavor Flav, the jester, can be misinterpreted unless you understand what the jester's role is. And Flav, being the jester, added a balance to the message that we were getting from Chuck, which was on one end of the spectrum, and Flav, which balanced it out, and Griff may be in the middle point, even though Griff was more the most militant member of the group, and he is a founding member of that group. I was listening to Wendy Williams, don't ask me why, and she made it seem like Flav and Chuck were the founding members, everybody else came later, and it almost seemed like she was throwing shots at Griff, because Griff might have said something, crazy about Wendy Williams and her ways over the years. And Terminator X sitting at the top with the dark glasses, never speaking. All of these things aesthetically, if you've ever been to a Public Enemy show, it hit you in so many different ways. You had the visuals, your heart was pumping because of the music, the message that you was receiving, the lightheadedness that Flavor brought to the whole equation. These were things that I'll never forget. They stamped me, they imprinted me in such a way that it still carries on to this day. So the reverberation of who Public Enemy was and is still relevant today. Now, Public Enemy is an idea, not necessarily a group. I'm going to say that again. They are an idea, which is far bigger than any group. Now, the members of Public Enemy are the ones who were summoned as the vessels to carry out the idea. And that idea that we are Public Enemy number one, that we are anti-establishment, that we are in the crosshairs, biologically, chemically, socially, economically, psychologically. There's so many left, and we're still to this day in the crosshairs. So while the message may not be as prevalent today because of social media and the gatekeepers having a unique way of tuning us out to what's important to us, the idea still stands. So when we say stuff like we are spiritual beings having a human experience, the spiritual essence of us can never be destroyed. But the human essence of us is going to go through trials and tribulations and may stray away from the spiritual principles. So when I say Public Enemy is an idea, that idea stands. But the humans who were the ones who were the vessels that brought about are on their own journey and path. Now, Public Enemy is 35 years old, the group. And the ironic thing about that is that Flavor Flav was 25, Chuck was 25, and Griff was 25. So these weren't teenagers. You know what I mean? These were grown men or young adults. And I think that's important to understand because that means they were born in 1960. That means they lived through Malcolm's assassination, even though they were young. They lived through Dr. King's assassination, even though they were young. They saw the emergence of the Black Panthers, even though they were young. And this had a long-lasting impression on these individuals. Not even talking about who their parents were or, you know, how they were raised in their home. I say that because Rakim was 18, Big Daddy Kane was 18, KRS-One had to be 18 or 20. We were all teenagers, you know what I mean? And we looked up to Chuck and Public Enemy because they were our young elders. They weren't the elder elders, but in hip hop, bringing about this message of this magnitude. This is why Chuck had such an amazing effect on people, because he was a grown man with a grown man voice, you know what I mean? And a grown man message. And they were the ones to kind of spearhead and bring about what we know as the spirit of Public Enemy. You know what I mean? The red, black, and green. So in getting into the details of, you know, Public Enemy, we see history repeat itself in a unique way because Griff was the first one to be denounced from the group. You know what I mean? Because of his message, his anti-Semitic message, right? We saw Malcolm X ousted from the Nation of Islam for his message on John F. Kennedy and other issues. We saw Khalid Muhammad be denounced from the Nation of Islam for anti-Semitic messages. And we saw it play out with Griff prior to that, in the middle of all of that, which was very similar. You know what I mean? He gave something for the Washington Times, and I believe the interview was over. I forget the details. And the guy still had a recorder on under his leg and asked Griff something, and Griff spoke truth to power. Now, Griff's message, had he said that today, this to show you how, you know, Griff is from another tomorrow, and how sometimes truth and those who bring truth are from another tomorrow. Had he said that message today, we go, all right, yeah, no, we get it. You right on it. But when you make a statement like that before it's time, in a climate in which, you know what I'm saying, the people may not have been ready for it. And I'm talking about the gatekeepers. You want to know who runs hip hop? That's a telltale right there. Because you could talk all the violence you want. You could talk about all the sex, the crack, the drugs. The minute you make a anti or so-called anti-Semitic message, you get shut down. So you don't need to know from that point who runs the industry. And it's ironic, they asked him who ran the industry. And he said the Jews run the industry. And he didn't lie, because he was reading books like The Secret Relationship Between Blacks and Jews. They don't call him the Minister of Information for nothing. So information was his thing. So he could stand on that information, but timing of these messages. So a lot of times you see these revolutionaries who are ahead of their time, and we don't appreciate them until they're gone, locked up, dead, 6 feet under. You know what I mean? Right. So Griff's message got him ousted from the group, and the group became more or less Chuck and Flavor, and Flavor is a major pillar of this group. So when Chuck speaks about ousting him from the group, and Flavor's response is, you can't oust me because I'm your partner, it's like yin and yang, so to speak. He has a point. But again, spiritual beings having a human experience. Flavor's human experience led him down a path of drugs, partying. He got 4 baby mothers, 8 children. It led him down, and that's not to knock him, that's his path. And Public Enemy, I'm pretty sure Chuck and them dealt with a lot. Griff used to say they used to have, while they had the song out, Night of the Living Bassheads, to do the video and things, they had to drag Flavor out of crack houses. So these are the in-house things that a group keeps to themselves because the idea is more important than the ones manifesting or bringing forth the idea. You know what I mean? That will change from time to time. So in Flavor's personal transgressions throughout his life, I'm pretty sure Chuck tolerated a lot. You know what I mean? And in doing so, they may have gotten to a point where Chuck is like, listen, enough is enough. So this Bernie Sanders situation where Bernie is tapping into Flavor's energy, right? With the whole pose, fight the power, we know that's Flav. That's an archetype image of Flavor Flav. And the clock, you know what I mean? We understand that those are archetype images that are, synonymous with Flavor Flav. And to have a Jew, out of all people, who got Griff ousted from the group from speaking about Jews, come and tap into that to try to give himself a little boost, can create a lot of chaos. Yes?
Yeah.
So if Chuck D had just said, this is Chuck D, and I'm supporting Bernie, I don't think anybody has a problem with that. And I say this because, and this is another thing that bothers me, we hold people to their word or their message from 35 years ago. Chuck may have had a specific message 35 years ago when the group started. He's 60 years old now, a grandfather, you know what I mean? And his personal views in his life may change, and then people say, but you said this. Yeah, I said that shit 35 years ago. You know what I mean? So a lot of people want to hold you to that, and I'm one where when new information comes into my life, it is my responsibility to make adjustments based on new information that comes into my life. Doesn't mean my general principles are ever going to change. But along that way, you may change. You know what I mean? But that doesn't mean Griff's ideas change or Flavor's ideas. So you can't throw a blanket statement out there like Public Enemy is performing and supporting Bernie, because then Griff's phone ringing off the hook. Flav's phone's ringing off the hook. You know what I mean? Right. And it created a situation where I think the group had to get behind closed doors or get on phones and hammer some things out. And I'm rooting for them because they're an institution. They are bigger than people's personal transgressions, and you know what I mean. So that's why I'm always saying the message is what it is, but my personal journey may take me through a whole bunch of channels and trials and tribulations, and we can't necessarily hold that against Flav, and we hope Flav gets his personal life together, but at the same time, looking at it from Chuck's perspective, it's like being in a relationship. Relationships just don't end overnight. One final straw, you know what I'm saying, or the final nail in the coffin, whatever that may be, will bring up everything else, and and then it becomes a cumulative situation where we go, God damn, I just can't deal with this no more. And you know what I mean? And these things lead about the demise, but them out of all groups are very important, and a public spat was not really good, because even Griff was in the airport and gave a little 15-minute, piece on it. And then when he got with the brothers and they kind of got together, even Griff was like, okay, we're not going to do this publicly, because none of us wins when this is done publicly. So there's, again, back to the idea sometimes is bigger than the group itself, and it stands for something that's still relevant today. Daddy-O from the legendary group Stetsasonic has a campaign going now for Self-Destruction Part 2. You know what I mean? And he's got Premier, he's got Pete Rock, he's got Easy Mo B, a few other legendary producers who have agreed, Prince Paul and a few others, to put this project together. I'm not sure if KRS-One is involved with this one, because I didn't hear his name, but as they come together, because we are still heading for self-destruction. So while the players may change, the idea of self-destruction is still relevant to this day, and we have to address these things in the current time that we live in.
So What do you say to how the story was framed? Because it seemed like Flav was only kicked out because he was speaking out against Bernie Sanders, and Chuck D is supporting Bernie. So it looks.
That's what I'm saying. Aesthetically, it looks on the surface as is that, but Chuck has recently released a statement signed by other members of his group to say this is something that has been going on for a very long time. Timing is everything.
Yes.
Because had this Bernie Sanders situation not come about, perhaps something else would have, I think eventually something else would have led to them having to have a sit down to discuss the internal, strife that is going on in the group. I don't even know what Griff's disposition is in the group. Sometimes he's in the group, sometimes he's not. And he still has issues of why, Chuck decided to take that position and oust him out of the group. And here are some other things that have to be taken into consideration. What we decide to do before the money and, the situation comes, it comes down to money and other things, we may have an agreement, and that money and fame and notoriety, because we're talking about young brothers from Long Island who are now thrust in a position of power all around the world, traveling, and it became a point where it was either Griff or the group itself. And when the idea is bigger than the individual, you follow what I'm saying? That may be the answer that Chuck has to give to Griff, and I'm not sure Griff will accept that, but no man is bigger than the idea. You know what I mean? And while Griff was standing on pure truth, I just got finished telling you, true revolutionaries are usually from another tomorrow and are misunderstood in the day and time that they're at their height. You know what I mean? So me on the outside looking in would say, well, that would be the reason, because there was too much money involved at this point, too much notoriety involved at this point, and perhaps after putting out Fight the Power and all of this, they came to a realization that they are bigger. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. Public Enemy is so huge and stands for something more than just that. But it was also a telltale of who runs the industry. No, you didn't need to look any further than that based on that. So timing is everything. Flavor saying, I do not support this Bernie Sanders shit. You know what I mean? And I'm not suing you, Chuck, but I need to put a cease and desist on Bernie tapping into my energy. You know what I mean? To further his cause.
What do you think about that? Just the whole concert thing in the first place?
I'm against all that. I told you. Black people have to stop falling for fucking concerts. You know what I mean? If you're not going to sit down with like Griff said, the most brilliant amongst us and have real dialogue and real conversations about the issues that plague us. You know what I mean? You give us a concert. Now, I'm not saying a concert can be in conjunction with that. Right. You know, I want to be clear with that. Right. So, but I'm tired of dancing, doing the all these. What's this independent guy who was with Juvenile?
Oh yeah, I forgot.
Forget his name. He jumped on stage with Juvenile. It's like you don't respect who we are and our vote. Now, Chuck, out of all people who I respect highly, knows this. But in his eldership, because he's an elder now, you know what I mean, in the culture of hip hop, older men for war, younger men for counsel. So Public Enemy has to take on a new energy of younger individuals who are willing to fight for the idea. And Chuck is an elder now, and he has a right to individually, support who he wants. But that's why it should have been performance by Chuck D.
Right.
Of Public Enemy, or whatever the case may be. Fine, then I don't think we have this strife, but I think this strife was necessary because there's a lot boiling with Public Enemy. Now, Flavor Flav is a very polarizing figure, I've said on many occasions, because there's a new generation who don't know who Public Enemy is, but they know who Flavor is based on the Flavor of Love and him being the one who really brought about reality TV. Yes? Yeah. And him wearing that clock. And when I talk about you can go to the past and destroy the future, people looked at me and was scratching their heads. Well, if you don't know how powerful Public Enemy is as an idea, a group, an iconic figure, and what they stand for, but you know Flavor Flav for buffooning and doing that thing, now when you see the group today who are still trying to bring about a positive message, because we still haven't received freedom, justice, and equality in this country, it's hard for you to take them serious because Flavor Flav is such a polarizing image. So that clock represents so much, the past, present, and future. Him being the darkest one, the highly melanated one, representing a black hole in which they can move through and out of time, and they use flavor to do that. In my humble opinion, just speaking metaphysically. So now when the whole group reassembles on stage with Terminator X, Griff and the S1Ws, Chuck and Flavor, unless you are of my age and older, you do not understand the magnitude of that, yes? But you see Flav and the younger generation only thinks about white women goofing off, and so it's very important how magic works in this realm. So I'm hoping that Public Enemy can get behind closed doors, work out their differences, reassemble in this day and time, because they're just as needed now as they were then. But we know the gatekeepers have found unique ways to soften their message. I'm hoping that Daddy-O from Stetsasonic can realign some brothers and sisters for Self-Destruction Part 2, and we can reinfuse the political, social, and activism back into the culture of hip-hop.
All right.
So with that being said, of course, this is the Black Dot. These are my chronicles. This is my story. I'm sticking to it. Shout out to Griff, Chuck D, Flavor Flav, Stet, all of the ones who are doing the work out here, you know what I'm saying, to keep real hip-hop alive. Subscribe, hit the bell, hit my Cash App. Let's get it popping. We out of here. Peace.
Peace.